Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving a comprehensive guide for the Prime Wars. We're going to get into the good, the bad, the ugly, and a guide on how to actually defeat the Prime Wars if that's what you're interested in. If you want to just skip to that portion where I talk about how to defeat the Prime Wars, I'll leave a timeline below on the different portions of this video and you'll be able to skip to that. So let's get into it. Now, the Prime Wars are a late game public event, and I say late game because even though it says on some of these you could do it around level 25, or however, a lot of the equipment and the resources required to actually bring down the Great One is locked at higher levels. So it's going to take a while before you're actually ready to defeat a Great One. However, it will take some farming and some leveling up before you can get to one of those places in the game. These events can be activated using Staroid, or they could be teleported to from the map once they begin. As you can see here, this Prime War has begun, and it allows me to teleport to it if I would like by pressing F. You win these Prime Wars by defeating the Great One, and you could lose the Prime War if the Great One destroys the Staroid Resonator that you use your Staroid to activate it, right? So once it spawns in, it's going to try to attack the Staroid Resonator, and your job is to defend it so it could purify the Staroids into your rewards. While you fight the Great One, you'll spawn a ton of mobs, both small and epic, and they'll try to also aid in the destruction of the Staroid Resonator, as well as any of the structures that the player creates. Now, there are 3 different Great Ones that you could face during the Prime Wars: so the Ravenous Hunter, the Shadowhound, and the Secret Servitor. The Prime Wars can be done at 9 different locations, and each location has a different variation of difficulty depending on the area. So now let's get into the good about this. I believe that these Prime Wars offer challenging gameplay. That's pretty fun. It's a unique experience that tests your strategic planning as well as your combat skills. You have to team manage, resource manage, prepare as much as you possibly can before running into a battle such as this. Another good thing about the Prime Wars is that they offer exclusive rewards. So defeating a Prime War nets you a bunch of Star Chrome as well as valuable resources. The first time you complete it, you get about 800 Star Chrome. And depending on your rating, so your performance on how well you did, you will unlock certain crates. Altogether, around the 9 different locations, you'll be able to net about 2,400 Star Chrome once you first complete it. Another great thing about the Prime Wars is you can unlock rare deviations from these crates, right? So I unlocked the deviation by the wind when I completed the Ravenous Hunter here. And when I had reached above 800 rating, I was able to get the Gold Stardust Advent Crate, right? So essentially for the rating, like I mentioned before, you got 300, 600, and 800 for the different tiers. And the better you do, the higher the crate you will get, and the better the rewards. Now let's get into the bad about Prime Wars, alright? Prime Wars are very resource heavy. It requires a lot of preparation and time in order to be able to actually pull off Prime War. Biomass missiles particularly are necessary in order to actually defeat this thing. Now let's talk about the bad when it comes to Prime Wars. Resources is an issue, right? Resources are necessary in order to defeat and accomplish a lot of different things in one's human. However, the resources required to beat Great Ones during the Prime Wars is incredibly high. However, I will say they did lower the requirements just a bit when they released the last update. The biomass missiles are important when it comes to actually being able to defeat the bosses. They require 15 steel ingots, 20 stardust, and 1 premium barrel of fuel in order to make 1 missile. Now, that is a lot when it comes to fuel. It's not easy to get premium fuel. It takes a long time for refineries in order to be able to process more simple fuels. And if you're making it from scratch with acid, it takes an even longer time to acquire acid and let that turn into regular fuel. If you have the specialization that allows you to make red plasma rounds, which require 125 stardust as well as 30 steel and 4 premium barrels of fuel, you'll be able to create a lot stronger types of ammunition that you could use to bring down the Prime War boss much quicker. Now, these rounds are used on Gatling guns, So you would have to have a Gatling gun built at the location of the Prime War, which in itself can be another issue you have to cross. There are pretty complex mechanics behind the Great Ones and the Prime Wars in itself when it comes to the shield and the health. Now the shield is incredibly difficult to manage. The shield has such a high damage reduction when it comes to regular ammunition and bullets that they're useless. There's no point in shooting the Great One when it has its shield because it'll never drop, right? You need something that's explosive, and even some of the smaller explosives like the rocket warhead or the improvised explosives, they don't really do a lot of damage anyway. So it's kind of a waste to use it unless the shield is incredibly small already. Also, the shield tends to regenerate completely if you don't kill the boss in time. It will regenerate at least twice on every single round, but in the second time, if you don't bring it down past a certain health, it will regenerate the shield completely. So you have to keep in mind that once you've reduced the shield once completely to zero, that it will come back. Don't think that it's over and now you could just kill it. Now let's get into the ugly, which is my personal gripes with the Prime Wars, right? I don't believe that the rewards that you get for completing a Prime War is equal to the resources spent to complete a Prime War. These resources are valuable. Stardust, fuel is not easy to come by. Steel's a lot easier to create and you don't have to worry about it as much, but Stardust and fuel is not easy to come by unless you have the specializations that let you create automatic farms in order to not have to worry about having to run into the world essentially. Now the building is going to be an issue. You'll notice as soon as you show up, there's a ton of whatever you want to call this is, a mass of different fences, foundations, walls built by other players in order to block the Great One from getting to the Staroid Resonator. However, it makes it very difficult for the player to maneuver and get around the area. So if you're trying to get to a more advantageous point or whatever, it's going to be a pain. Like right now, this little wall is blocking off the road that leads up to the top of the cliff up here. And a lot of the times, because of the way that they've built all the structures around this area, there's actually a ton more down this way. You could see that this goes on for a very long time. Because of all this, it makes it really hard for the Great One to get up there, but it makes it really hard for you to get up there as well. And this actually causes the Great One to spawn on top of the cliff. It usually spawns around the silvery pool mass, and when it pops up out of there, it will make its way towards the Staroid Resonator, which is actually located down there across the way. And since it's spawning up here, and it can't come down because there's a bunch of this here, it gets glitched up and stuck up at the top. This is not the case for every single Great One. It is for this one, but the fact that this happens at all is wild to me and really frustrating, because the next issue I want to get into now is the fact that there's going to be game performance issues unless you have like a really strong computer and a really strong internet connection. There's going to be game performance issues. You're going to have, coupled with the mass of foundations and fences and walls, you're going to have a lot of players jumping in. And most of the time, since the Prime War will open up and allow people to teleport whenever they want to, you're going to have a lot of players just loading in that general area. And once they get in, they're going to be throwing explosives, a lot of them are going to be shooting bullets. It seems, from every experience I've had so far, a lot of the players that actually participate in Prime Wars are not equipped at all to combat it, and this is their first experience with it. This happens a lot in the starting areas mostly. It still happens further out, but I see them wasting tons and tons of bullets on this Great One when the armor is not even dropping at all because it counts it as zero. It doesn't count it as anything really. It's got like hundreds of thousands of HP points probably, and you're shooting one and a half point away per bullet. So there's no point in wasting the time unless you're well prepared. But like I said, there's going to be a ton of performance issues. The game's going to be lagging up like crazy. You're going to be seeing foundations load in last minute that were in front of you before that. Your car, your vehicle will just get stuck on random stuff, and you won't even be able to get into a good position that'll let you be able to fire upon this thing. And another thing too, another issue is even if you show up prepared, if somebody had built a Gatling gun, because you're going to need to build a Gatling gun, somebody had built a Gatling gun in a position that you don't like, you can't do anything about that. You can't erase it. And because that there's a limitation on how many Gatling guns that could be here, you're probably going to be a little bit screwed if, for one reason or another, the Great One doesn't spawn in a location that you could fire at with the Gatling gun. The mobile territories I covered in a separate video. I said that you can't bring it into the Prime War location. I think I'm a little bit wrong with that. I tried it with the tractor trailer, like the big one, the really big one, not the pickup truck. The big one, as soon as I pulled in, it disappeared completely. It just vanished. And this is before the Prime War was even activated. It wasn't during the Prime War. I had to recall it back to my base. I did see yesterday, though, when I was doing a Prime War, that somebody had pulled up in their pickup truck with a Gatling gun. So that might be possible, but I'm still not certain if it will be completely possible or if it's just bugged. It's still an issue that I really don't like with the Prime Wars, and that you will have to keep in mind when you do complete these things, or think that you could just show up in a mobile fortress and make this whole process a ton easier. Now let's get into how to actually beat these Prime War battles. To start a Prime War, you have to go to the Staroid Resonator and pay 150 Staroid, which is these little materials. You probably have a ton of it. The game gives you a lot of it. You only need 150 in order to activate the Staroid Resonator in order to start the actual process. When you get to the location, if you're looking for the Staroid Resonator, it looks like this. You might show up and it will be all messed up and smoky. It's most likely because somebody didn't repair it after it was destroyed, after they failed the Prime War. Repairing the Staroid Resonator is free. You don't need any materials or anything like that. You just have to make sure that the timer, the cooldown for it, has finished, and you should be able to repair it. Now when it comes to building defenses, most likely other players will have the important parts covered. As you can see right here, the Prime War is not even active and there's a bunch of structures here. However, building structures and then having those structures be attacked or engaged in the Prime War battle will net you more of a rating than you would have typically with just firing upon it and damaging it. There isn't a lot of strategic structures you could really build besides just creating a lot of space between the Prime War Great One and the Staroid Resonator. Building around the Staroid Resonator could help too. You could build like a little box around it. It doesn't prevent you from doing that, but it will be destroyed eventually if the Prime War boss is shooting at it from a range distance and isn't bugged up and glitched like I discussed before. The most important thing to build when you're at this, if you don't see one, is a Gatling gun. So coming to the Prime War battle prepared with the Gatling gun will also be a really good thing. On top of building the Gatling gun, before you show up, you need to bring biomass missiles. Now, biomass missiles are very important. They require a bunch of rare resources in order to make them. The stardust required for these resources have lowered, as I discussed earlier in the video. Right now, a biomass missile requires 15 steel ingots, 20 stardust, and 1 premium fuel. Now, premium fuel is hard to come by and stardust is precious, so it might be hard in order to make a ton of these. However, I calculated how many biomass missiles is required in order to bring down the armor of a Great One. In order to bring down the armor of a Great One, you need about 20 biomass missiles. Now, each biomass missile does about 15,000 damage each. And in order to actually have enough missiles to kill the Great One, because the shield will regenerate after a certain amount of time or damage has been dealt to the Great One, you'll need an extra set of biomass missiles in order to cover the second armor regeneration. Now, I would recommend bringing a little bit extra biomass missiles in case you're unable to kill it on the second armor depletion. Now, the number of biomass missiles required is 20 in order to bring down the armor. resulting in 40 in order to bring down the armor twice. This does not include the amount of damage necessary in order to take down the health. Usually, you won't have to worry about that portion. When you start the Prime War, it'll notify a lot of people that are in the general area that this has started, and most of the time people will flock to the Prime War to see if somebody has shown up prepared, and if you're that person, they'll be very delightful and happy to lay down as many bullets as they possibly can into the Great One. However, I still recommend that you show up with the best weapons that you can. Having portable turrets will also help in order to attack it, have extra bit of firepower. So any types of items really that could bring down the health of the boss will do fantastic, especially if it deals high damage. Now, if you're one of the lucky few who managed to get the red round plasma specialization, you'll be able to craft less missiles in order to bring down the armor of these great ones. However, the resources required in order to build these red plasma rounds is expensive. Just like the regular biomass missiles, it requires steel ingots, stardust, and premium fuel. However, it requires 30 steel, 125 stardust, and 4 premium fuel in order to actually craft one red plasma round. However, these red plasma rounds deal a whopping 75,000 damage each, so I personally think that the amount of resources required is, I guess, equal to the damage output and might be worth the specialization perk. When you manage to break the armor of the Great One will collapse, it'll fall down, and it'll give you a good portion of time in order to fire upon it and really lay out as much damage as you can. The shield will regenerate after a certain period of time when this happens, so keep an eye out for that. Once the Great One reaches a certain amount of percentage of health, I want to say it's about 25%, it will activate a certain phase, I guess a Berserk phase, where it unleashes a devastating attack. There's usually a way to stop this attack from happening, but if it doesn't get stopped, it will kill everybody in the area. It's an insanely powerful attack. You will be able to resurrect yourself afterwards, but just keep that in mind and be prepared for that. There's 3 different attacks because there's 3 different Prime War bosses. They all have their special ones. The Shadow one and the Ravenous Hunter is fairly easy to see. It's very similar to the ones that they do in their normal boss battles, except for the Ravenous Hunter drops down a giant missile in the sky. The Shadow Hound just does that spinning motion in the air before it lands, and the Secret Servitor does a little bit more of a complicated thing where it flies up and does a big ball attack that you could stop. There will be mobs that spawn, you have to keep that in mind as well. The mobs range from the normal little guys like the Gnars and stuff like that to really big epic bosses like medium sized to large, I want to say, and they will get in the way of the Great One, so you might have trouble actually landing shots if they're standing right there. Most of the times the bullets will just automatically adjust to the target near it instead of the target that you actually were aiming for, which can be frustrating, but it could be worked around. Now again, the rewards you get for completing a Prime War are these crates here, depending on your rating, your overall rating. And the first time you complete each location, you will get 800 star chrome. There are 9 locations altogether. You'll net 2,400 star chrome if you complete all of them. These chests are RNG with the rewards, netting a bunch of random stuff from energy links to gunpowder, as well as eclipse cortexes, stardust sources, premium fuel, different weapons and armor, as well as mod parts, and deviations from time to time, such as the deviation by the wind, which allows you to fly up into the air, creates a gravity lift underneath the player, or in a certain location that the player designates. Alright, to recap, the Prime Wars in Once Human provide a challenging and very rewarding experience in my opinion, and despite the high resource costs and potential game performance issues, I think it's a very good opportunity in order to not just earn rewards such as the deviations that I mentioned before, but also gives an opportunity to socialize, meet new players, and play with them and create a more unique multiplayer experience rather than just having you play solely alone, defeating these bosses primarily alone. Remember to prepare adequately before you start these Prime Wars. You don't want to be like me, who showed up completely unprepared, wasting every single explosive and other heavy-duty item that I had crafted or obtained since the beginning of playing this game on this boss, just to not do any damage whatsoever, and feel really disappointed after the entire experience. Had I prepared more and knew all the stuff that I discussed, I probably would have had a much pleasant time. You also want to coordinate with your team and make sure you guys strategize efficiently in order to be able to claim your victory and defeat those great ones. And that's all for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and for all your support. If you really enjoyed this video and want to see more Once Human content, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot and ensures you won't miss any of my future uploads. Be sure to check me out on Twitch where I stream daily. The link is in the description below. We have a great community there and I'd love for you to join us. Also, don't forget to join my Discord server. It's a perfect place for us to link up, discuss the game, and even play together. Discord link will also be in the description below. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I read every single one of them and I love hearing from you. I'll also be replying to every single one of them as well. Thanks again for your support and I'll see you in the next video.